Hey, reader, this is Centaur here, and I am excited to be joined by Mike, who ran the Liberation of France narrative event this past February that I attended. This is kind of an after-action report. Mostly my my schedule got a little more clear, which is great, and so I have a chance to meet up here with Mike to kind of talk a little bit about how the event went, things that he noticed, ways that it differs from other events that he's run in the past. I figure I'll start off, Mike, by just kind of handing the floor over to you. Feel free to, talk with the people. Obviously, you've been here on the channel before, but yeah, anything you want to lead off with before we dive into February 22nd?
No, I mean, first, thanks for having me on. Help you grow your channel, hopefully. And I'm glad we got the opportunity to actually discuss this. I know it's something we talked about doing when we did the last video, so we'll have to get back together afterwards and talk about how it went. And we're adults with lives, and it got busy, but yeah. So here we are. It's good to be back, and can't wait to talk.
Awesome. Yeah, so just to start off with, and I'll link to the video below in the description so that way people can see kind of what the tournament was like and how it was set up. But effectively, for those of you who may not have seen the first video, we had a time limit for the entire day, not exactly a time limit on each board. So a specific match could go for 3, 4 hours, as did happen sometimes. But it was designed to be kind of, the Allies versus the Axis, roughly an equal number of players on each side. And the Allies trying to break in, starting with storming the beaches and then working their way possibly to Strasbourg for the German HQ there at the end. You score victory points based on how many, well, tournament points effectively, for how many boards you control at specific time points during the day. And so the result is we had quite a few different types of boards. So we had two beach landing boards, and I think Mike, there was a limit on one Axis player max on those boards, correct?
So I mean, if you go back a page,
Yeah.
it'll actually show that this was a narrative event to be the invasion of France, but it was not historically accurate necessarily. It was an alt history, our telling of how it would have went if we were there fighting the battle. And as you see in that picture, there's a glider landed on the beach, which did not happen in real life, but it did in our game, and that was actually a turning point of that
Yeah.
battle. So
Yeah.
um, so anyway, I don't remember. Oh yeah, the one Axis player per beach landing, and the intent there was this was a invasion into Normandy. So I wanted ultimately the Allies should get through the beachhead. So
Right.
and as we saw on the tables, that those one army dug in those entrenched positions, held off 3 to 4 Allied armies for many turns, several hours. And eventually there was a breakthrough like we anticipated, but it worked well. I think the only thing I may have changed, and I bounced back and forth on this, was at the beginning I declared that pretty much the whole table, beach and everything, was rough terrain, and that slowed down the Allies' advance and allowed the German player to take his time picking off units and stuff like that. And I've questioned, like, was that too much of a hindrance to the Allies? But then on the flip side, since we didn't get to see how it worked, if it was open ground, would they have gotten across too quickly and just overrun
Mhm.
them? I don't know. So I didn't really hear any complaints about it. I think everybody that was on those tables had fun. So that's what it was really all about.
Yeah, I was part of the airborne landing group that landed in the Ardennes, but then fell back to the beaches when we got summarily curb stomped, really, to be completely honest. And we'll talk about it more, I guess, when we get to that
Sure,
board,
sure.
maybe, I don't know. But one of the things I will note is that, yeah, I mean, from what it seemed like to me, everybody there kind of approached it, at least from the Allies side, because they were the guys I was talking with, from the perspective of like, yeah, no, like we anticipate the beach landing is going to be hard, it's going to be a slog, it's going to be difficult, and they were kind of leaning into it, which I thut was awesome.
Right. Good.
That's the kind of thing I love to hear. And then when the airborne boys fell back and we started joining in on the beach, suddenly everybody was like, "Yeah, let's do it!" And then we finally were able to break through. But yeah, I was on the board that Ryan was playing on, and
Right.
I mean Ryan, even with inexperienced troops, was holding on really well.
Yes.
I was amazed. Some of it, I'm sure, was good cover saves or whatever, but some of it was also just, as far as I could tell, the two German players that were on those boards, good generals making good decisions.
Right.
And so sure enough, even though they were outnumbered like 3 to 1 at 1.4 to 1, they were hanging on. They were doing their job, which was
Right.
good.
Yeah,
So
I know that there was some lucky hits at the beginning, took out some landing craft, and that that started
yeah,
that kind of created a roadblock for some of the people, and it eliminated some of the order dice. So get a lucky hit that can change the outcome of the game. So
it's
yeah,
true.
it worked. So, but all in all, I know we're kind of non-scripted here and just kind of talking off the cuff, but just for the background, we talked a little bit about it. This was a charity event for the American Legion.
Mhm.
We ended up having 20 players, 21 registered. We had one had the bail at the last minute. I just couldn't make it because of some family stuff. Um, and we ended up raising $425 for the charity. So it was good. It worked out. And in the end, we had 10 players on each side, and it worked out great. So it was my first narrative event. I wanted to do something. I am the local tournament organizer, but I don't know what the driving force was. I wanted to kind of try to do something different, bring some different players in, and it seemed to work. I kind of liked it. It went as I expected. Like every event that you run, you're going to have hiccups and snags and stuff like that. But all in all, it was exactly as I anticipated. Some of the concerns I had were that like someone would be stuck at a table, that
Mhm.
there was no enemy. And that actually did happen to one of the German players. However, I talked to him. I was like, "Hey, dude, I see you're just kind of." He's like, "No, this is great." He's like, "I really haven't played bolt action in a
Mhm.
couple of years. I'm just getting back into it. I don't really have any third, so I'm just kind of watching." So like he was having a good time just watching the other battles and kind of learning and refreshing his mind with the rules. So it seemed like it was a good time had by all.
Yeah, no, actually, he stopped by our table when we were getting smashed, and he and I just kind of got to talking, and yeah, it was kind of cool. He he was kind of asking some questions about how different things worked and stuff like that. But a quick study who's played bolt action before, so
Right.
I think it was kind of nice for him just kind of see the rhythm, that sort of stuff, and then it seemed like he had a really great time fighting at the Manor House afterwards. So
Right. Yes.
that was awesome.
And ultimately he did get to play. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
for that game probably went for like 4 or 5 hours too. It
right.
was
Yeah.
it was a
It
big
was
it was a big one. But yeah, you mentioned that you're kind of the local tournament organizer. And by the way, if you have a chance in your local or live roundaboutish or willing to travel, Mike's tournaments are awesome. So you
I
should totally
appreciate
go to
that.
those because I've been to several of them. But obviously, narrative events and tournaments are a little bit different. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how it felt, the difference
Well,
between them?
I think uh, in some ways there was less work for the
Hmm.
narrative event. I didn't have to reach out to a bunch of vendors for prize support. I'm very fortunate. I have a good working relationship with our local hobby store. And so getting a site is not bad. I think some of the logistic stuff can be more difficult. I got fortunate again. I'm with the American Legion, and they offered up the hall for us for a charity for them, kind of reciprocity type thing, because the local store just couldn't. Wouldn't have been able to handle us overrunning the place, for 12 hours or whatever. So, um, running a tournament's a little bit different. We had about the same amount of people. I actually get a little bit more to tournaments, so they would have had the space, but I don't think the environment would have catered towards. So that's a little bit different. Having the right location, I think, is
Hmm.
something good to kind of set that theme. Um, Tournaments. I was a little more stringent on the list building for a tournament, making sure that people are making legal lists.
Yeah,
I haven't really turned away too many lists, but there are occasionally that they fall within the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law. It's like, especially in third editions, like,
yeah,
I don't know if I can let you take 9 Nebel Warfers,
yeah,
like, can you please rewrite your list? I haven't run a third edition one yet. And I know those
yeah,
lists are out there. So, I just, those are the type of things with this. It was really like, you're making a fluffy themed
yeah,
army, and I had people ask, "Hey, can I take this?" We had the airborne troops. Can we put this in the gliders? And I was like,
yeah.
"Yeah, if it makes sense, do it." So being a little more lax in that type of stuff made it good. It's also, you can fudge the rules however you want. You can as far as what terrain does what, or what time limits are, whatever you want to do. It's a narrative event and you want to tell a story, so you are catering the event to match that story and do what you want to do. Whereas in a tournament, you have a rule set. Now, as a TO, you can also dice caps, whatever. There are things that you can do, but you still have to kind of fall within the left and right limits of that rule book. But other than that, like, putting it together was very similar. But like I said, I kind of feel it was a little less stress doing the narrative event, because I knew people were just there to have fun. So I wasn't worried about making sure that I had, the right score sheets for everybody, and pens and paper, and just the kind of stuff that I try to do at my events to make the tournament event better, because having been to tournaments and like, oh man, if I had only had X here, oh, I forgot glue, I try to, put like just a little swag bag with glue and stuff like that, and just so people have that kind of stuff. But for this was like, hey, we're out here to have fun. There was an open bar, so like, let's have a good time, have a good day, and if you think you're gonna need something, just make sure you bring it. So
Yeah. No, when I having run tournaments for other game systems, I bet not having to do tab between rounds and worrying about, oh no, did we start the
right.
round on time and stuff like that. That was pretty
Yeah,
nice not to
that,
have
that
that.
that's true
Yeah.
too. I wasn't even thinking about. I was thinking more of the preparation, but yeah, the actual running the event too. Yeah, the scoring it between and making sure you have the right pairings. And these guys already played each other, and we try to avoid that. And they're both these players have played on the same table before, and like just trying. Yeah, there's a lot more those type of things that try to make it smooth and a good event. Yeah, it's a little bit more work on that. So.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, as somebody who's looking at running some narrative events in the future, I thought it was very well run, and I've definitely taken some notes for myself on things that seemed to work and things that worked out well. In terms of board design, so I mean, I thought the boards all looked really cool, and I'll, as we're talking, I'll start kind of flipping through so the audience can see what some of them looked like. But like, were there specific thoughts that went into, kind of, okay, we want it to be immersive, we want it to feel like what you would see, but also we're playing the game of bolt action? And how did you kind of think that through
So,
in designing this?
yes, you pretty much answered the question with your question. I don't know if you'll have it on there or not, but I had a map of France, and that was, you were fighting over the. Um,
Yeah, now you mentioned it, I don't think I actually pulled over that picture to
but
the slide
so
deck.
that's what
Classic.
that's what you're fighting over. There
Yeah.
was numbered locations that each of the tables represented.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, if you were going to Carentan, you have a beautiful picture of what we ended up calling Saint Maritan, because it was kind of Saint Mary Glaze and Carentan both together. Um, so we, Rob did a really great job printing out those things and
Yeah.
making it look like Carentan.
Mhm.
The fillet pocket right there again. I
Mhm.
think if you watch the previous video, make sure the one that you had earlier today that you released.
Yeah.
Um, he wanted that to represent a rich manor in the fillet pocket, because I was historically a center for royalty and stuff like that. So as we went through, yes, I tried to make each of the locations that they were fighting over uh, represented on the tabletop. The places that I picked for them to fight over were based on historical engagements. Obviously the beach landings, Carentan, the fillet pocket. We actually had a Battle of the Bulge, which is a different kind of point of the war, but it was a historical location that people are familiar with. Um, we had the German headquarters was an airfield in right outside Strasbourg, which was an actual airfield that was there. So I tried to go with historical locations, and then the setup came with just making it playable, but also allowing it to fit the narrative. Um, Both Rob and I, he runs multiple narrative events, and I am more of the competitive player of the two of us. So I kind of know how to set up tables to be balanced and playable in a competitive setup, and he's really good at making them very narrative. And I think between us both, we set up a good balance between the narrative and the kind of, I hate to say competitive because it was a narrative event, but
Yeah.
the balance that you would find in a competitive type play.
Yeah. No, that's true. Well, and for what it's worth, the Allies did technically make it to the airborne
They
base,
did. They
which we
did.
loved. I think we killed maybe 3 German models. It wasn't much. But
Well,
I'm not gonna lie. I came over, I saw the Strasbourg base, and I'm like, man, it just looks so good. Like I haven't built any of these quite yet, but just the attention to detail, all of the little types of buildings and stuff, it looks real. But at the same
right.
time, as you're looking at, it, you're like, okay, but there's a decent bit of cover on both sides.
Correct. Yep.
There is some limitation to movement on both sides, so there is an advantage, I suppose, to picking one side or the other if you're the defender. So on the whole, I thought it was really really well laid out. All of the boards were really
Well,
really well laid out.
we
It's
appreciate
awesome.
that. And it was interesting as play went. I don't know where this kind of fits in our discussion, but
Yeah.
moving from map to map, there are
Hmm.
that beautiful Carentam that never got played on. Part of that is a lessons learned about the narrative. It was kind of like a choke point. There was no
Yeah.
reason to go there because you could kind of bypass it. If you got there and got stuck there, you'd be bogged down. So I think people
Yeah.
just avoided it. So that's more in a preparation type thing with the designing the map and how it's laid out. There should have been more nodes or networks to get to it. And then Paris became a huge choke point.
I
Um,
was going to say, I actually made Paris an entire slide just because I think it was pretty much fought over for the
The
entire
entire
day.
time, yes.
Yeah.
The Axis took it at the very end, and they ended up winning the day because of that by a point. It was the taking of Paris. If the Allies had held on for another hour, or until the game ended or whatever, it was it would have been a Allied win or a draw. I can't remember how it worked out, but yeah, it was a hard fought a battle over Paris. So that was kind of lessons learned is try to avoid the choke points and avoid the areas that people are just going to ignore.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that coin, the the aspect of the movement, it was 15 minutes to move between tables and stuff like that. I think worked very well because there were some very strategic moves that were made. The Allies were able to get to the uh, German base because the Germans left an adjacent table completely empty. The
Mhm.
Allied generals recognized it and they did an airborne drop on it. Had to wait 15 minutes, but we couldn't respond in time because we were all currently engaged in other areas, and that allowed them then to press into the headquarters. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I wanted to see out of the narrative is those type of strategic level movements, not just the tactical, playing on the tabletop. So, and it all came together.
Yeah. No, and it was beautiful. And I'm not gonna lie, every now and then I'd pop over to the Paris board just to see all the carnage that was being rocked. Because I
Oh,
mean,
I mean, we had a tank battle on both sides, and just multiple tanks just were getting destroyed. And
buildings being destroyed, like there
yeah,
was all kinds of stuff going on. And so I tried to include several pictures. It doesn't quite bring out the reality of it, but I mean, it was intense. It looked awesome, and it seemed like everybody was having a blast. Um, it also kind of got me thinking though, as I was reflecting on these. So obviously, like you end up with a lot of covers. What ends up happening because you've got wrecked vehicles, you've got
right.
what used to be buildings and stuff like that. And obviously, in second edition, if that was the case, we'd have a lot of like hitting on sixes or worse, basically. With third edition, changing things like, for example, cover. Right? Did you find that it still played really well? That it was pretty fast, or did you find that there was, so many saves going on and stuff like that that it kind of bogged down a game that was already overloaded with a lot of order dice?
Good question. I find that at least in Paris, because that's where I spent most of my time fighting. Actually, was it forced movement.
Hmm.
Like if you want to take this town, you can't just shoot tank on tank because eventually somebody's going to lose. You
Right.
have to not necessarily outflank, but you have to flank around movement wise, with your anti tank to try to get some side shots on those tanks. You need to move infantry up because these were objective based games, so you had to move your infantry up to get on objectives and hold those objectives. And around the Arc de Triomphe, it's wide open. So
Yep.
yeah, you're in beautiful cover. You could get in and around the arc and still get some cover, by being behind it and avoiding lines of sight. But if you needed to move, you had to make that decision. So I think it did change had it been second edition rules. Movement may have been easier because you're still going to be at long range and light cover and all these things, and people may have been more apt to just kind of run out into the open, maybe.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think this made for the tactical movement between buildings to buildings. Like, I can move really quick going building to building, but they got HE pointed right at it. Like one of my heavy, I think it was a heavy howitzer, took out a cafe in France, and then turned it from a building to ruins. So it can happen. So it's like, do you really want to be in a building with HE around? I think it worked great. There was constant movement and battle. It wasn't like a stalemate. We weren't in trench warfare or anything like that. There was still a lot of dynamic aspect to the game.
Yeah.
Especially because you don't know other armies moving in. Like, they could come in and be outflanking. So even, you can't rest on the fact that I'm hunkered down here because you don't know what's coming in behind you or whatever.
Yeah. No, that was actually something that me and Walden, who jumped in together onto the Ardennes board, discovered pretty early on because, like, at first we're going up, and I'm not gonna lie, the original plan had been I'd been pushing for, hey, we should jump into San Lo and do the Bokage fight because if Bokage is blocking line of sight, that's a safe way to land a glider.
Correct.
And we were told, well, we should push deep in so that way we can tie up people so they don't come and reinforce near the beach and they don't crush the Paris guys. So you guys should jump into the Ardennes. And the moment that I said, okay, yeah, hey, we can work with the Ardennes. That's fine. They've got trees. It'll be okay. And the moment I saw that Joe Lint was on the Ardennes board, and I didn't talk in with him earlier, and I knew, okay, he's got Panzer Grenadiers, he's got flak everywhere.
Right.
This is a bad idea. I'm not gonna lie, I almost broke ranks, turned to Walden and said, we are not jumping into the Ardennes. But what it meant was when we did end up jumping in, we were quickly like, okay, so we know where Joe's guys are. We can start kind of planning around it for where we drop our guys and what we do. And the whole thing flipped the moment Rob came to the table.
Right.
And then
Right.
when a third player came to the table and we're suddenly realizing, oh, like we built plans for, open topped half tracks and, some light armored vehicles and, a bunch of veterans and stuff. But now suddenly there's a bunch of veterans and a Panther,
Right.
and that was not part of the plan originally, like we didn't have anything for that. And then suddenly they're also being joined by, they brought in Air Force observers. So now we got to worry about aircraft and
Right.
stuff like that. And so it was interesting. It's not just okay, we set up on the board, we build a plan, we maneuver, and we get around. Like you're constantly looking over your shoulder of sorts,
Right.
saying, and the whole thing might change the moment somebody drops new at the table. And
Right.
nobody's dropping on our side because they're all engaged.
Correct.
So
Right.
I loved that aspect. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it was harrying, it was tense, but it was exciting.
Right. So, being one of the players who did the airborne drops, what did you think of the rules? It looked like they were deadly for the. I don't think there was really any successful airborne drops except for the one on the empty field.
Yes, they are. The rules as written are pretty brutal, especially for gliders. Because in the case of a glider, because it has to be held in reserve, it can't come in until turn 2. When it comes in, everybody goes down. So
Right.
you can't get anybody out, which means that unless it's the very last activation of a turn, uh, everybody and their mother gets a chance to shoot at the glider because it's
Right.
a soft skin vehicle. They're all probably going to hit it. They're likely to destroy it. Everybody inside is taking pins. They're all coming out, taking hits, going down. You could easily lose 5, 6 units coming out of that thing.
Right.
But it's also the only way to get people in who aren't airborne, right? And
Right.
so I'm not gonna lie, it was tricky, trying to find a way to land it. And, you're also trying not to run into trees while you're in the process.
Right.
There's the
Right.
actual process of landing a glider, which is pretty big. So, like it was tricky. I do think if I was making a change to the third edition rules, the biggest one would be if somebody wants to react with flak against a paratrooper unit, I would require them to set their dice to fire. So
Okay.
that because what ended up happening is with the way it's technically written, it's flak, so it's free. It
Right.
doesn't cause them to activate. So if you have an army that has like 7 flak units in it and they're getting shots at every single airborne unit that's coming in, airborne units are starting with like 5 pins each,
Right. Right.
after having suffered casualties, and then they're on rally, so you can mess them up. So not only are you sitting out until turn 3 effectively to activate anybody, you're coming in pretty beat up. So like it's pretty brutal. Some of it I could have probably done a little bit better, to be honest, which is funny because I did the whole video talking about how to do it. But yeah, in as much as you can decide where you go, if you can at least airborne drop onto an enemy unit, then at least you're fighting them and you have a chance to do something earlier in the turn. You're still probably going to get mauled by whatever comes
Yeah.
after that, but
Well, I will say
um,
we were scared of the airborne drops. We didn't know where you were going to come in once we saw, and that's why we pushed. As soon as we saw where you
yeah,
were landed, the orders went
yeah,
to send reinforcements because we were concerned like they're going to overwhelm us with the airborne drop. And
yeah,
I think, like you said, you had plans for Joe, and if it was just him, you probably would have been able to take them. So,
yeah.
yeah. So I heard the same type of things you're saying. It was kind of brutal, and if and when I run another one, those are rules that we can tweak. Because I think people liked the concept and liked running their airborne. It just, putting the theory to practice didn't work very well.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest, it was really fun. And me and Walden were talking about it afterwards, and we were just like, okay, even though like we knew pretty quickly on that we were probably going to lose, like one, we were buying time for the guys at the beach, we
Right.
were buying time for the guys at Paris. So in that sense, we were like, it's not that we don't matter, it's that we don't matter.
Right.
Uh, you know,
Right. Right.
we're gonna go here, we're gonna have some fun, we're gonna shoot at some stuff, we're gonna tie them up. And that'll be our job in terms of offense, which I'm sure was the role of some of the airborne units on D-Day.
Right.
It was just
Right.
disrupt,
Disruption.
make sure
Yeah.
people don't get to the beach, right? And so, but on the whole, I thought it was good. If nothing else, it definitely assured me that like if I'm ever running a competitive event, and somebody says, "Can I use combat jump?" I'll probably just say, "Yeah,
Yeah. Go
if
for it.
you want to."
Right.
Like
Go for that wooden spoon.
from experience, it can be really useful. It can be really dangerous. So
Right.
yeah, hey, if you can get good at it, by all means
Right.
use it. And hey, it might encourage some people to run units with flak or take the tank
Sure.
or the armored car option that can do the flak instead of other stuff. Like it,
Well, and there is still the psychological effect, right? Because
yeah,
I've never seen it at a tournament, so I don't
right,
know that I would know how to deal with it right away.
right,
By the time I figured it out, it's too late. They're on the board.
right.
So I might be able to pop one of them or whatever. So it's if you're not planning for it, I can definitely see it would be much to your advantage to use it, but it's also very deadly if the person you're playing against knows how to defend it. So
Yeah. So on the whole, I thought it worked out really well. Are there any, it kind of as you look back now, hindsight obviously is 2020. Like, are there other changes that you would consider making? We've obviously already talked about the nodes and other stuff like that, but I mean,
no, I mean, I really think that's the biggest one was the choke point in Paris, and then I had probably three tables that didn't even get played on, at
yeah,
least two, I think three, and it's like that, kind of we did all the work. Now, the flip side of that is we were in the American Legion. We had Legion members come up as part of it. They could provide bonuses to the players
mhm,
on the map, and they just gawked at all the terrain. And these are
yeah,
not gamers. These
mhm.
are some of them probably have model
Oh,
railroads, like
trains,
who knows,
yeah, something like
whatever.
that, yeah,
But nothing but positive. Like, oh my god, this is amazing. So us being the nerdy people, playing our silly war game, to see people, the muggles out there still appreciating what we do was kind of nice to see. So I don't know that there'd be too much I would change. Minor things I said, whether or not the beach landings, if we do that again, and I don't know that I'm going to do Invasion of France again, but those type of things, classifying terrain, making sure that it's not too unbalanced. I think those are the biggest things. As far as I got really nothing but positive feedback from people, other than minor tweaks. So like, oh, if you and it wasn't even you really need to change this. It was just like, hey, did you have you thought about doing X? And you know nothing that would have been game breaking. Even to make the change on the fly the day of. So
yeah. No, I
yeah,
mean, well, from experience and from somebody who was testing out some of the weirder rules and more unique stuff. I mean, I had a blast. It was so fun. I will confess, it was kind of nice not to have the pressure of a tournament
sure, right.
and to be like, hey, I'm showing up here. I'm gonna have some fun. I'm gonna roll some dice. We're gonna try something new.
Yeah.
We're not keeping track of win ratio. Like we're just gonna try something out, meet some new people, and have some fun. And it was that for sure.
And I think we had. one, two. I think we had four like brand new players.
We did.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that this a narrative event is a great way to draw in players because there's, you know, I kind of jumped in to the game. My first event really was a tournament, because I had a couple games under my belt, and Chris Johnson was like, "Hey, we're going to," I don't remember if it was Historicon or, and he's like, "You should come." I'm like, "Okay." And I got my butt stomped and was like, "Do I want to play this game?" But it was, eventually you learn. But I think a narrative event where people are there just to have fun, you win, you lose. Even if you lose, you're right back in it on another front. You don't have to like, "Oh man, I'm out of the tournament now. I lost my first game. There's no way I'm digging my way back," because that's not what it was about. So, just because you lost the battle, the war's still raging on, and you can influence it later. So, yeah, I think it's a great way to bring in new people. And they had nothing but positive things to say about it. So,
Yeah, no, it's not surprising. I mean, it was great. And I think there were even some people who stopped by who were not participating, but do have an interest in bolt action. So that
right.
was kind of fun talking with them about how the rules work and stuff like that while they get to see it on display. Uh,
And
on
I
the whole,
think
fantastic.
it's a testament to the community too, where we had four brand new people that had never played before. There was actually a father and son team that played as one. But so the kid was learning, but there was no like, "Oh God, I got to teach this guys the rules." You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think the bolt
Yeah.
action community, it was just all like, "Okay, no, you got to do this," and it was kind of like a tutorial as they played, because it didn't impact, like, that would suck at a tournament. You had a guy that never played before, and you're like, "Dude, I can't tell you how to play the game,"
Right.
because I'm trying to beat you. So, but in like I said, a narrative event, it was about having fun and allowed for that those teaching opportunities.
Yeah. No, and I had a chance to kind of roll with some of them. We made a point on the Allies side to make sure we always had them paired with people who had played before.
Sure, right,
So
right,
that way, one, they could get the teaching, they get the training, but also just because, like, I don't know, I think people just feel more comfortable when they're like, okay, and I'm on this board with this person who knows what they're doing,
right,
you
right.
know?
True.
And
Yep.
so they can, they can help out and make good decisions. And I love that, we weren't putting them with training wheels. They were making decisions on,
Right.
when they wanted to advance up and when they wanted to sit back and fire and when to just push, push, push. And on the whole, I think they did really well and everybody seemed to enjoy it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I agree. So I mean, I highly recommend if people are looking to do things and can put together a narrative event. It doesn't have to. We had 12 tables, 20 players.
Yeah.
You could do this with two or three tables. And 6, 8 players. 3 or 4 per
Mhm.
side. You don't need a lot of people to run a narrative event. But it's a good way to get new players in, and tell a story.
Yeah.
I know Rob was talking about that when he's developing his terrain and stuff like that. He's trying to tell a story, so
Yeah.
he did a great job, I think.
Yeah. Uh, Kind of last question from me. So obviously it's a little too early, and maybe it's not best for me to be asking this question, of the guy who's always running everything for us locally. But any thoughts on what the next narrative event might be? Question mark or
I I
when maybe
I
anything like that?
was I have been thinking about it. So first, I'm gonna shout out. I haven't announced it yet, so this will be the whatever the reveal. My
Soft
next
announce, yeah.
Yes, my next tournament. I just locked down May 24th.
Okay,
It'll be a Saturday. It is Memorial Day weekend, but I'm hoping people aren't traveling on Saturday. So
they'll be fine. They'll
right,
make room for bolt
right. Plus, I
action.
mean,
Yeah,
it's Memorial Day. You're honoring the veterans. Why not play bolt action?
yeah.
So anyway, as far as narrative event, I have thought about it. I don't have a time. Like I said, I do my tournaments typically in spring and fall, so maybe sometime this summer, if I can work something. I don't have a theme yet. I guess that's the biggest thing. I'm a big European
Mhm.
theater World War II fan, and we did the invasion of France. Maybe. I guess that'd be one thing I was thinking about. This was all of France, so you had so many different types of battlefields and things. So I think I have thought about doing a maybe the same scale as far as like number of tables, number of people, but it's only the Battle of the Bulge. So
Right.
your battlefield is much smaller. So each table is only like a portion of the same battlefield instead of being a whole other like element of the country.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm looking to go, something like that. So a smaller scope of the battlefield, but I haven't determined. I'm not a big Pacific Theater person, but I know there's several players out there that have Japanese armies, and they're like, I never get to play them. So maybe it's an opportunity, and it's a reason for me to make some U.S. Marines or put together a Japanese army myself to play. Which is another reason we play, right? Like, hey, I got to put together an army for this event. So,
This is true.
right.
Shucks, got to go buy
So,
some stuff. Yeah.
right. And I think, the terrain can be done. So maybe Pacific Theater. I haven't decided yet. I have to talk to Rob. He's got most of the terrain when it comes to that type of stuff. So I know he
Yeah.
has some Pacific Theater stuff. It could just be one island. All 10, 12 tables could just be one island. So, approach it from different landing sites. So I think I think that might be the direction we head, but I don't have any solid plans on that yet. So,
Gotcha. Cool.
but you'll be
Well,
the second to know after me.
nice. Thank you very much. I feel honored. But no, yeah, I mean, I'm pumped. Obviously, I don't really have a strong preference on it. I know that for some of my friends, we're looking at doing something, kind of simple, Band of Brothers style stuff, just
Right.
because again, that's what everybody knows.
Right.
Um, and I'm slowly but steadily trying to build up, Pacific theater sort of things, but I'd be the only person contributing to it, so we won't do
Right.
anything like that anytime soon. But I mean, no, I think on the whole it'd be really great. I guess you could probably even reuse a good number of the boards doing like Invasion of France 1940, I
Right.
suppose. Maybe not the beach landing
Sure.
stuff,
Sure.
obviously, but that sort of stuff. And now it's, the French are the ones on the back end, and maybe Belgium is included or something like that with the BEF against the Germans or whatever. But
And that's a good thought too, especially the way the armies are laid out. Hopefully there'll be a couple more. There'll be the U.S. and the British by that
yeah,
time at least. And the armies are laid out with early war, middle war, late war. So you just like, hey, your lists have to come from early war because it's
early
the
war only. Hmm.
So yeah, something like that could work too.
Yeah.
So
But I think that's one of the beauties of it. It's just that, because of the fact that we have all the history books and stuff like that. Like there is, I think, a lot more opportunity for narrative play in something like Bolt Action
sure.
than there is in, I'm not trying to be mean to other game systems, but I think just, I mean, we have so many resources, right? So many
Right.
things we can look at that will help us out with it. And because we're forced to study some of it in school, we have a generally larger base of knowledge. Everybody roughly knows what's going
Right.
on
Sure.
during World War II.
Right.
So
Nice. Yeah,
sweet.
definitely. So looking forward to it. So
Should be fun. Well, I mean, I'll put it on my calendar for May. Looking forward to seeing you then. Anything else you want to say, just kind of as a last minute thing to the audience before we close out?
no, I mean I don't know who your audience is, but as Aaron said,
Neither do I.
if you're if you're in the Mid Atlantic area, Baltimore, just outside Baltimore, is where I host my events typically. So if you can make it, we'd love to have you. The larger we can make this community, the better off it is. So.
Well, thank you again for your time, Mike. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple of months. And thank you again for the event. It was so much fun, and we
So I'm
really
glad you
enjoyed
liked
it.
it. Yep. So, all right, yeah. Anytime you want to, get together for a game, if you're ever up in this area, just let me know.
I will. It'll be good practice.
All
But
right.
yeah, well, take care of yourselves, and I guess we will see you all next time.